What's up, everybody? Welcome to our discussion here on HBO's The Last of Us, episode 8. Wow, penultimate episode, fellas. Here we are. We've got a lot to unpack today, and we'll get right to it. I'm Josiah Leroy. With me today, as always, Mr. Baba Yaga. John Fick. Hi.
Baby girl.
Don't you dare. Don't you have that tone with me. Also, Mr. Tim Talbot. We got Coffee Tim tonight. He's got the beautiful Sabres hoodie matching John's also equally beautiful t-shirt. I have it as well. It's not on me, though, so I can't really...
Prove it.
Should have heard what he said before.
All right. Give me just like 4 minutes. I would just bolt to the closet and back.
Oh, my house is so big. It takes me 4 minutes to go downstairs.
Hey, at least I have a roof, okay?
Hey, watch this. Want to see me go downstairs?
And he's there.
That's how easy it was.
Well then, so we are live at twitch.tv/thegeekiverse. We are chatting HBO's The Last of Us. We'll keep it spoiler free here for the first few minutes. And then, of course, we are going to dive into everything the episode has to offer. We'll get right at it. Tim, why don't we start with you? First reactions on this episode. We'll switch it up today.
Every week, I think to myself, wow, this is my favorite episode. And I thought the same thing this week. So it just keeps getting better and better and better. This, to me, felt the most game-like. So I felt like I got the biggest feeling that a lot of the stuff they did in this came from the game. Like, I felt like I was playing it almost. I don't know if I can explain that correctly. Just like a lot of the stealth portions that you saw like the fight scene towards the end. Like, the whole thing was awesome to me. And just the character development from Ellie's perspective, and then seeing Joel, his development throughout the episode is just, it hit me in every way, and I was like, oh man. But yeah, I think this is my favorite by far, I think, so far. So had everything I would want in it, So I was very, very happy without, spoiling too much. But
knowing what was going to be coming our way here, I'll say if I had to think about the entire season before it started, this is the one that I would have circled to think about from how uncomfortable is this episode going to make me. And I think it kind of accomplished that in a good way. John, your thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I agree with all three of those points. This is the episode that I think is the closest to the game. I think that like the story beat, like they changed almost nothing as to the way this story unfolds. I agree with you that like this is the one that I was the most excited for sure. This one was on my calendar. I would have told you that this one's the one to watch out for. And I also agree with Tim's first point that like how many times have we talked about this, that I think this is my new favorite episode. I think that this is my new favorite episode. I want to say at least, I'm looking at the episode list, I would have said it from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, and from 3 to 4, from 4 to 5, from 5 to 6, skip 7, and then 8. So like every episode but 7 was like my next best episode, and they just keep doing it every week. But this was one that was like really circled for me because like to me, while not to spoil anything about the climax and like the finale of the show or the game or anything like that, while that finale is going to be great and we know it's probably going to happen having played the game, to me this is like the emotional climax of the story in a lot of ways. This is where Joel and Ellie kind of solidify their bond. It's where some of the most intense things happen to them personally. And we're going to go into that obviously when we hop into the story beats here. But this is maybe the most impactful situation these characters are put in. And I think they did a great job at adapting it. I think they did a great job growing on some of the stuff. Like we talk about every episode, they're very additive in the way that they've adapted the story. Yeah, like what else do you want? It's perfect.
A few things for me before we jump into spoilers. I'll say this episode in both instances for Joel and Ellie individually had some of the most passionate acting on screen, the most heartfelt. And I don't mean heartfelt in like a gushy kind of way, like we'll talk about it. But also, I will say one thing that towards the end of the episode, if we look at the video game comparison to the TV show, very similar, but I actually like how the video game handled it better, which we'll get to. And I haven't said that much throughout this season, so we're kind of splitting hairs. But I guess that's a bit of a tease. So if you have not watched the episode, bookmark this, come back to it. If you're live, hopefully you're enjoying this at twitch.tv/thegeekiverse. You can watch all of our episodes back in video form on YouTube and, of course, listen on podcast services around the globe. So now we're going to dive into spoiler territory. John, why don't we jump right into your notes and go through the episode?
Let's do it. So yeah, episode 8. I forgot to grab the title of this one, but they've all been interesting. I've liked all the titles so far. What was this one? Oh, When We Are in Need. When We Are in Need was episode 8. So that's a very poignant title. So we start this episode off not the way I would have expected. We start off with David. So we're in this mysterious town with these mysterious people, especially if you have no context. They're kind of doing like a service. They seem like they they've got their own little civilization here, but it seems to be like a funeral procession, like a service, and that is definitely the case. So in the games, we don't open with David. We open with Ellie, and the first time we're introduced to David is during their encounter, which through the episode we'll get to. Another example of this show just giving us more time with characters and little groups that we didn't have before. We got this with it was Pittsburgh in the game, but it was Kansas City in the show. So we got it with that Fedra group. We spent a little more time with them. We saw the leaders. We saw the side characters. We fleshed those out a little bit. Same thing here with this new crew that we're just being introduced to. We didn't get this much development and this much of the inner workings of this town and civilization in the video game. So they're having a service. Go ahead.
Yeah, John, it kind of just goes hand in hand with what you're saying and probably about to say. Like, instantaneously, especially with what we know about David, like, I'm immediately like, get this guy out of here. Can't stand him. He's up to no good. He's hiding behind that mask, that facade of he's supposed to be this great leader, right? This pastor, so to speak, if you could say that. And he's not that guy. He's a horrible person, as we find out throughout the episode. But right away, for what it's worth, kudos to the actor. I'll have to pull his name up. He did a good job nailing that dynamic where there's a little bit of mystery there that Shroud, you kind of assume he's a bad guy, but well played right off the get-go.
Yeah, I'd agree.
David is played by Scott Shepard. Not someone I'm very familiar with, but he did an incredible job portraying David. Portrayed by... go ahead.
No, go ahead. You can finish.
Portrayed by Nolan North in the video game. Nathan Drake himself.
Oh, nice.
Nolan North was David in that game.
He really... I'm sorry, Tim. He really nailed the voice element.
Yes, there's
it's
almost like this creepy, almost like nasally, kind of nerdy like guy, right? Like almost like unassuming leader. Like, why is this guy a leader? What's the point of him being a leader? And then you kind of slowly realize why people might want to follow behind him.
Because he's insecure, right? Like for the wrong reasons, and yeah, we'll get into that.
Right.
Tim, I know we've cut you off a bunch of times.
It's okay. So all I was going to say is when this starts off, you had mentioned how it starts differently. I think in the game, it was like that iconic bunny scene, right? Where it's the little white bunny hopping around. You see it later in the show, but little white bunny hopping around, and then out of nowhere, the arrow comes down, and it's like, you get like that one girl reacting.
I love that TikTok. It's so good. Because it's so awesome. Because it's right after Joel gets stabbed. So like,
yeah, it's the first thing you see
in the game. Joel gets stabbed, and we basically cut to Winter. So she's like already in tears. If you're not familiar, we're talking about this Twitch streamer who was playing the game The Last of Us, who like had this visceral reaction to these events that happen. You should watch it. It's a very entertaining clip.
It is pretty good.
Yeah, classic.
That's what I think of when I think of the start. I was like,
me too. I was waiting to see if they would do the bunny, but they did the bunny justice. The bunny gets to escape in this.
I was surprised. I was like, come on.
I mean, she had a rifle. I was hoping she wasn't going to take the bunny out with a rifle. I'm like, I don't want to see this bunny explode right now. In the game, Ellie's hunting with she's hunting with an arrow, bow and arrow. So would make a little more sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we're still go ahead.
I'm always of the mind, selfishly, that people have to go through what we did.
The bunny didn't explode.
Something. Give me something.
Could you imagine seeing that? Just
yeah.
That'd be good.
Like light it up like the Death Star, folks. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we're still in this little area. We're having what we realize is a service for one of their fallen members, and the daughter kind of speaks up at the end, and she says, "Can we bury my father? Like he passed away. Can we bury him?" And David, the leader, has this weird look, and he's like, "We can't. The ground's too cold. We can't bury him now. We'll do it in spring." And just right there, something's off. Something's shady, and you're thinking like, even if you haven't played the game before, you're already on edge. You're like, why are they being shady about how they're burying bodies. Weird. Okay, so first little hint about what might be going on here. We get introduced to Buddy Boy, as we know in the game, a nothing character named James, but he happens to be played by Troy Baker, who was the original voice of Joel. So cool to see Troy Baker in this. We get this dynamic between James and David where James doesn't necessarily trust David. Like, he knows that, like, this is the leader, but he doesn't really have faith, and we can tell that. There's some doubt in this conversation. They introduce us to this character to show us that, like, David's a ruler, and, like, he leads these people, but he probably leads by something that's not healthy because this guy doesn't really buy into it, but he's, like, basically there because of fear. So it's just like this little tidbit that's going to, it's going to evolve throughout the episode. But incredible to see Troy Baker, as we will more throughout the episode.
Yeah, Troy nails it, man.
Yeah.
He as he does, right, from a voice standpoint always, but to see him on the screen for once was really great because I mean, look it up, folks. If you're not familiar with Troy Baker, if you're into video games, you are. But just Google him and look at his list of performances. Every major video game franchise, basically, he has touched in some way, shape, or form. He's played some of the most prominent roles out there, including Joel in The Last of Us. He's the Joker in Batman Arkham Origins. So the
Booker,
list goes on and on. He was
Yeah.
in Call of Duty, like it's just so on and so forth. He's always involved, and you know it when you hear it. It's so awesome. Uncharted, the most recent Uncharted he was in. So take a look at it. It's quite impressive, and I think that'll just add to what you see on screen here.
And I will say, but when you look him up, before you look at like his accolades and what he's done, just click on images. Just take a look at him. He's gorgeous. Like, he's just one of the best looking guys I've ever seen. Like, just browse a bit, enjoy yourself.
So funny thing there, John. I took a picture. I want to say this was like, it was not State of Play. It was one of the Summer Gaming Fest videos over the summer, but Troy Baker was there, and this is where they were talking about The Last of Us Part 1. And I love the way he was dressed. He had basically like this blue suit coat on, white dress shirt, and then gray pants. And I was like, wait, I have those two color suits, like, fully. I think that would look really cool. And then he had these shoes on that were like professional yet laid back. So I took a picture of him because I wanted to replicate this outfit. And Lauren, was looking at pictures. She's like, why do you have this this poor picture of you like taking a picture of the TV? I was like, oh, that's Troy.
Did he have anything spilled on his pants or no?
Nothing. That was a low blow.
Dang.
So I'm like, well, I like the way he's dressed. I'm like, I'm going to replicate that. So I basically copied that outfit. Tim over here is alluding to how we went out to eat last week. And someone dropped something in the kitchen, and I was like, oh, Lauren would have been clapping right now because she's a jerk, because we did that in high school and still does it at the age of 32. But then not 10 seconds later, do I drop my salad fork and right out of my gray pants in a really bad area. So for the rest of the meal, I've got like an ice cube, and I'm just kind of like trying to wash it. It was horrible.
The moment it happened, he mentioned the slow cap. I'm like,
it was horrible.
You hate to see it.
Anyway, yeah. Tangent done.
Tangents. So we've got James and David hanging out outside of that little, wherever they were, that commune, and they start to discuss how their food supply is low. They don't have this, they don't have that, and they agree, let's go on a hunt. Let's head out. Let's try to catch something. So right after that, we finally cut back to Ellie and Joel. Ellie is tending to a very, very rough shape Joel. She's trying to get him to drink water, eat food. He's really not moving much. He's got the sweats. He's not looking good. He's alive, but he's not looking good. She kind of comes to that realization that, they're getting low on food. I don't know what it was, a piece of jerky or a cracker or whatever, but she split it in half, and that seemingly was the last food they had. She left him one, she ate one, and kind of panic mode. So she decides, just like James and David, it's time to go on a hunt. So we follow Ellie into the woods, into the snowy woods, and this is how actually this part of the game starts, with Ellie going on this hunt. She locates a deer. She shoots it, but she only tags it. She gets she gets it in the hind leg or something like that. She doesn't kill it. So she goes after it. She chases it. And David and James end up finding the deer before she does. It kind of collapses near them, and they are ready to take it before Ellie confronts them. Ellie says, "Hey, that wasn't my next line.
Deer.
my dear, oh dear. So yeah, James and Dave say, hey, we come from a group of people that are hungry and we can trade you. Like we're not trying to steal this from you. We don't want charity. We can trade you for something. And Ellie desperately shouts out, medicine. Do you have medicine for like infections? And I thought that bit of acting was so good. You can hear the desperation in Bella Ramsey's voice, like, medicine? Do you have that? Because obviously Joel is at home back where they're camped up and he is not doing well. And David said, yeah.
Really quick. I love how that whole scene there, she did such a good job acting it because you could tell that she was trying to be an adult even though she was a kid.
She was trying to be the one in control.
So well acted. It was just so good. The entire time I'm like, you can tell that this is her first time trying to be in control, which is just awesome.
Hold people hostage, basically, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing we get in the game. And it's done a little differently. Bella's a little bit more girlish about it. She's a little less secure than I think maybe Ashley Johnson's Ellie is in the game. But like, hey, they both work and they're both their own thing.
Yep.
And David said, yes, we have got medicine. We can do that. And he says, James, head back, pick up some penicillin, grab 2 bottles, bring it back. And James kind of does a double take. And Dave's like, it's not code, James. Like, seriously, go grab it. Like, I'm not giving you a code to go, do some stuff. Like, go grab it. We'll be here. So James heads off, and David and Ellie are alone by themselves while James is gone, and they start chit-chatting. They start talking about themselves. Ellie's a little bit vulnerable because she's warming up, and they're by the fire, and David mentions, like, yeah, I'm a pastor. You got me, when she mentioned him being in a cult. They kind of talk about their histories, and then David drops the bomb that one of the person that we know that died from their crew, the person that they were kind of mourning in this service, was taken out by a crazy man traveling with a kid. So we get that knowledge drop that David is aware of Joel and Ellie. They killed one of their men on the way here, and nothing. What's the line? Everything happens for a reason is what David says, and then we get that slow zoom that just comes in on his face and the lighting from the fire, and we realize just from direction alone, David's a bad guy. David, there's no gray area here. He drops that bomb, and the way it's directed is like perfectly to paint the fact that this is a bad person. In the game, there's a bit of ambiguity, because in the game, you get to spend some time with David, actually. While James is out heading back to the camp, grabbing the medicine, David and Ellie are attacked by a bunch of walkers. This isn't The Walking Dead. A bunch of infected and clickers and stuff like that. So they work together. They're trading ammo, and you actually kind of build this bond with David, and you do start to think, like, maybe I did find one of the good ones. Maybe this is a Henry Sam situation. So you get a bit more of that in the game, but you quickly realize here in the show that David's not a good guy.
I did wish that was going to be a sequence where they had to fight out of like that horde. I know that The Last of Us primarily really is about our non-infected survivors, right? And how horrible they can be to each other and all these things. But I really kind of wanted to see that sequence. And even if it was not as long in the game, I know it probably didn't make sense from a pacing standpoint, but I was a little disappointed.
For sure. I think the pacing's the big thing, because I think they got enough of the point across with David and Ellie's conversation. Their conversation it kind of served the same purpose. They both opened up a little bit. David talked very openly about, the people at home and how he came to power. And I think it kind of had the same effect, but obviously not as much as being able to spend time with these characters in a video game. But, you pick your battles here, and that's what they've done really well, is pick those battles. So after David drops that bomb that, hey, we know this guy and this girl are out there, he says James, put the gun down, because James has returned. He heard the tail end of that conversation, and he is pointing his gun at Ellie. David says, hey, give her the medicine, let her go. And James is not very happy about that after hearing that conversation. But Ellie runs back to the house. She leaves the deer with them. She heads over back to Joel, and she starts just poking at Joel with this needle. She has no clue what she's doing. She says, where do I put this? Trying to get Joel to talk to him, but obviously she just goes right for the wound. Probably the best call. I don't know where to put that either, but that's what I would have done.
Send it. You've said right in the wound.
Yeah, exactly. Full send. So we cut back to David's camp, where people are starting to prepare for food. They're kind of in the back. There's these 2 characters. They're making food. Some guy walks in with a tray of red meat, and the girl asks, what is that? And there's this weird tension, and he says venison. And they both look a bit uneasy. And myself, I'm questioning. I'm like, are David and James back with that deer yet?
Right.
I wonder. I'm like, did they come back with that deer yet? And immediately we get the answer to that question as David and James come through the front door. And I at this point, I paused it, and I'm like, I watched this with Courtney. I'm like, I'm sure they're going to give us a more on-the-nose answer to this, but I think you should understand what's going on here. And I did explain it to her. I thought that was like the right thing to do, having known. I'm like, this is going to be a bit more impactful if you are picking up on these clues like I am. I'm like, they mentioned not having venison. They mentioned they can't bury the dead body. They shouldn't bury him. They mentioned that this is venison, but they don't have any yet. Like, what is happening here? And she's like, oh no, God no.
Dude, the moment I want to say the female individual in that scene kind of put their hands into that, I was like, yeah, that's
not good.
That's that.
Yeah. Courtney's in the chat here. It went over your head. I think it was supposed to be. I don't know if a lot of people would have. Right. I don't know if anybody who didn't know the story yet would have gotten that. I think it would have been one of those things where you watch it, you see what happens, and then if you watch it a second time, you pick up on those clues. But I thought it would have been good for you to having, the pleasure of watching it with somebody who knows the story, give you a little insight there.
I think that's how it should be done, though. It should be very subtle, like not too obvious. Because here's the reality that we learned is that no one knows but a select few people.
Right.
And, if no one knows, it's got to be subtle unless they physically, like, they show you or tell you, which obviously happens later on. But
you can read you can read the body language.
The lines.
They're very uneasy about it, and obviously the guy who's holding the tray very much knows that he's not holding venison. But that aside, David and James return. David announces to his people that, like, yes, you may have heard a rumor, because James obviously started talking when he came back, that we have located the people that took out whatever this guy was, the person that they lost. The plan is to put together a search crew in the morning. We're going to head towards them. We've got footprints. It's the snow. We'll be able to find them. The daughter of the dead, the dead soldier, the dead guy says, you should kill them. She's like, when you find them, kill them. And David just walks over and just backhand slaps her and knocks her off of her chair. And they just keep solidifying how much of a bad person David is. And what really got me, the slap is bad enough. Like, this is like a 14, 15-year-old girl who just lost her father. Is just kind of like raging out a little bit. He backhand slaps her, and the mother gets up from the chair, and he just puts his hand out, says, like, you stay there. Like, and that's what really, like, solidified this, like, level of control that David has over these people. And it's not good. It's not healthy. And we, all we have so far is clues, but we know it's not going to be a good situation here.
I was going to say, if there's any doubt at this point, prior to that, like, that's it. That's the nail in the coffin. This is a bad person. They've got, it's the apocalypse. But it doesn't matter. They've got bad morals. They're doing awful things, and they're the leader of this group. Oh my gosh, this is awful. What
if I told you we haven't even learned the worst thing David might try to do this episode?
Right.
Exactly.
So for me, it was kind of crazy too, because earlier on you find out what he did before he became a pastor, which was a math teacher.
Right.
And it's just crazy, and I think you find out more about, like, his personal demons, I guess, a little more. But I kind of think it's the reality that a lot of people kind of suppress these emotions, and then they're they get put in a position of power, and it's just, the need to succeed or, be a leader and have people want you and love you just, like, overtakes everything else, where you kind of go overboard. And I think you have the reality that maybe this guy wasn't always a bad person, but he's a bad person now and is abusing his power nonstop. And that's, earlier in the game at the fire, she's like, oh, like a cult.
Yeah.
And he laughs, but, like,
you got me.
It's a cult.
Yeah.
It's a cult. It for sure is a cult. So,
no doubt. So we cut away from that creepy little dinner ceremony where they all eat the dude and don't know it. We head back to the house where Ellie and Joel are hanging out. Joel seems to be improving. He's still kind of incapacitated, but he's not sweating anymore. He's not kind of moaning in pain. We can tell that the first dose of medicine kind of worked out a little bit, and Ellie sticks him again. He just looks a little more comfortable. Ellie heads outside. I don't know if she was ready to go hunting again, or I think she was getting some snow for the horse to drink, and she sees some crows or some birds fly off in the distance, and she realizes that, oh wait, something spooked them. Something is heading our way. Shit, it's probably the people that I was just confronting with. So she gets on her horse, and her plan is to draw them away. She goes downstairs. She tells Joel, like, hey, I gotta go. There's people coming. If they come in here, stab them. Figure it out. Like, she leaves a knife with him. She puts a bookcase in front of the door, and she hops on her horse with the intention of drawing them away from Joel in the city.
And every person felt that scene there, which is like, don't fall back asleep.
Yes.
Every person in the morning that's not supposed to fall back asleep, and he's like fighting it. So I felt that deep down in the morning with kids. So
Absolutely.
It's
So
painful.
she gets on the horse. She starts shooting at them, tries to get away, but James is actually one that shoots her down, and they capture her. The whole crew's around. James is in front of her. They say, "Kill her, kill her, kill her." Do it. Pull the trigger. James is about to, but then David stops them. He says, "No, let's bring her back to camp." The rest of them, they look for Joel still. I think the one finds the house that Joel is boarded up in. He sees the bookshelf. He knocks it down. We get downstairs. Joel's gone, and Joel sneaks out of the back and knifes this dude. One of the more graphic scenes.
he stabs right in the neck.
Right in the neck,
right in front of you.
And you see it from
Face
the mouth.
after.
Right.
Yeah.
The blood from the mouth, the face after. They did not shy away with violence in this episode. This is the one where they really were like, violence
they didn't take the camera away. They showed you.
No, for sure, and they did it. They did that a few times, and we'll get to the end where they really commit to that. So yeah,
I was distraught over the horse scene. By the way,
yeah, that's a tough one.
The horse dying. Yeah, I knew whenever an animal dies, I'm like, oh, don't hate the show, don't hate the show. It's fake.
We've seen 24 human lives die, but the horse, and you draw the line.
Just gonna say, so many people are like, "Don't you dare!"
It's so crazy how
kill that dog.
Desensitized we are.
Sees that part too.
It is a little messed up for sure.
It's bizarre, but hey, we're all kind of in the same boat.
Yeah.
So we cut back to Ellie. They're keeping Ellie in a cage, and Dave he tries to talk to her. He's like, "Hey, I want you to join us. We can feed you. We can help you. You can help lead by my side," which is like another like. Dude, my note here is creepy. This guy is creepy. Why are you being so creepy, man? Like, just the vibes from this conversation. It's just not what I'm looking for. He's got some undertones that I'm not comfortable with.
Child.
Exactly. Ellie's 14 years old, and he like wants her by his side.
So
by his side. Well, you sound like me.
By him side.
No, so good at speaking English.
No, so good.
So, Bella in the post game wrap up.
Post game.
I don't know if you. Yeah, you know what I mean.
All right, we should just end this.
Nobody can talk.
I just knew exactly what I was saying there. I meant to say that, so it is what it is. But she mentioned the word almost like wife, and I was like, oh, I don't like that at all. I don't know if you guys picked up on that.
That's how I felt about it. That's what I was thinking he was going with it.
That adds a little extra layer of gosh to all of that.
Yeah,
creepiness.
There's so much cringe in this episode.
It's bad, and it's crazy just to like go through and see like how these layers of David are just getting unpeeled. Like it's right off the get go, something's uneasy about this guy, and it's just like layer after layer. You find out how just shitty and creepy he actually is.
Math teachers that get you every time.
Freaking math teachers, man. So we cut back to Joel. Joel's got the other two folks with him. He's got them both tied up, and he's pulling his classic. Here's a map.
Nice little chat.
Yeah, here's a map. Point to where we are and where I need to be, and you better hope that your buddy's answer matches, or else you both have a problem. This is the big one from the game that we get, and it's recreated very well, as almost everything has been so far in this episode. Just like very, very faithfully recreated. Not a lot of liberties with the story, the narrative, the decisions here. So
That's where Pedro screams, right? Like he yells at the guy.
I was just gonna say that.
Okay, so that is what I alluded to in our pre-spoilers conversation earlier. I love that moment right there. He is not messing around. You better play ball, and even if you do, he's still gonna get you. Yeah.
He's talking so softly, and then it's like don't waste my time. Kind of, he just yells at him. Like, all right, yeah, this is awesome. Like he's really.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
it's intense.
I too have that volume. Like when my own buddy boy takes something that he shouldn't.
Buddy boy, like a bag of Colombian coffee or whatever it was.
He took a bag of Colombian coffee.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Good friend of the show, Marissa Martinez. She went to Puerto Rico a few weeks back.
That was it.
She brought back a bag of coffee. I was so excited. I thought I had left it in a good enough spot in the middle of our counter on the sink. Doesn't matter. Buddy boy Leroy gets what he wants. So he grabbed it, and it was all over our house.
Dude.
So to this day, even though we've changed it out 100 times, our vacuum, if we have to vacuum, you still smell the coffee, and I cry every time.
That's a good thing, though. I mean, it's a good smell. It's a bad reminder of what you lost, but it's a good smell while vacuuming.
Glass half full. I like that approach.
For sure.
But like, I wanted that coffee so bad, and he's already energetic. I think he was off the wall after that.
Dude,
Yeah,
the
fun.
picture you showed me of just the trail of coffee throughout the kitchen
Oh
into the
my
living
gosh,
room,
that's
like
so funny.
it's really it's good. It's sad.
That is hilarious.
It's no good. So yeah, Joel gets the answer out of the first guy. He sticks the knife in the kneecap. Nah, man, what a tough scene to watch. Like, mess with me, I'm gonna pop your knee out.
This little twist in the middle when he's like not responding right away. He's like,
right.
It's just the impatience. Oh.
And that's right from the game too. That's exactly what Joel does to this guy. And he kills him, right? He's like, all right, I got my answer from you. And then he walks over to the other guy. He's like, I'm not going to tell you anything. You already killed him. Like, what the heck, man? I'm not going to tell you anything. And Joel's like, I don't care. I believed him. And he just takes out the second guy. Like, oof, what a badass way to get some information.
Yeah.
That's a great Pedro Pascal performance there. If I'm going to think over the course of the season and, maybe top 3 to 5 moments for him, that's going to be in it. It's a wonderful little moment there. And that, as John, you mentioned early in the episode, like this is the one that really solidifies Joel and Ellie's relationship. And you're seeing that come to fruition there, even though they're not together, because he's going to do whatever it takes and he doesn't have the time to mess around.
There's that one response and he's like, the girl, where's the girl? And like, that's when he really screams and you can hear the passion in his voice. Like he's not going to stop until he finds this girl here.
Love it.
So we cut back to Ellie. She's locked up still. She's messing with the cage. She finds some screws. She's trying to figure out a way out of here. And then she kind of just glances off and she notices an ear and just like a hunk of flesh sitting on the ground. And it kind of just floors her and she backs up and she's like, what in the world? No way. And then David comes back with a nice hot meal, which is like bad timing, bro. He sets it down and he realizes what she's looking at and he kind of just lets out a sigh and he's like, for what it's worth, this is actually deer meat. I'm not lying. And then she just kicks it, and it's one of the coolest scenes. Like, she freaks out, obviously, because she figures out that, these people are eating their dead. And David admits it. They have this conversation, and he's like, yeah, I'm not proud of it, but we've resorted to that. We've had to do it. Only a select few of us know it. And after that, he still tries to persuade her to join them. And this is where he kind of doubles down on the, we can do this together. You can be by my side. You have a violent heart, which is what he says about her. That's a theme that we're going to see a lot going forward on Ellie. That's something that we didn't really touch too much on in the first game, but they're nailing home here in the show because it's a big theme in the second game, and we know we're getting that story told via television as well. So they're really starting to nail that home that Ellie has a violent heart. David recognizes that. He says, I've got a violent heart as well. Join me. Let's do this together. I'm a creepy dude. Come with me.
Let's be creepy together.
Exactly. Let's be creepy together. So she plays ball for a second. She puts her hands up on the gate. She touches his hand just enough for him to get close enough so she can just absolutely break his finger and cause the guy some harm. And one of the classic lines is, my name is Ellie. Tell them my name is Ellie, the little girl that broke your fucking finger. Like, straight from the game.
Bashes her face off.
Exactly.
That's the first time you really see her get hurt, I feel like.
Big time. Yeah, big time hurt.
So that's the other half of that comment for me with the passionate performance. That's her version of it there. She really lets loose. That is from her gut where she screams that. And again, I've said it numerous times. I love what Bella Ramsey has done throughout the season. She's what I think of when I think of Ellie now, and that just further solidifies that. And that her acting really came to a new level, I'll say.
Yeah,
that line when she screams that, like, she gets that grunge, she gets that raspiness, just like Ashley Johnson does in the original performance. Like, you get a lot of that from Ashley Johnson's Ellie, a lot of the raspy, a lot of the the grunge. Not so much with Bella, but she really tuned into it here. She really got deep, and you hear that,
and it's almost more impactful to me because it doesn't happen as often. So when she has to hit those high notes, she really does, and there's a force behind it, just like Pedro Pascal had a few minutes earlier.
For sure. So she obviously upset David. He's not too happy. He's not too bought in on the plan of bringing her along with the people. So we get David and James coming back. They've got a machete or a big knife in hand. They pull Ellie out of the cage and they drop her on the table. And they're ready to chop her up before Ellie says, "I'm infected, and I bit you, so you're infected too." And they both have this back and forth, like there's no way. And what? She would have turned already. Rolls up her sleeve, sees the bite, and they're still kind of in a panic. And Ellie takes advantage of that to grab that cleaver and just drop it in James's neck, which is the way it happens in the game. And it's kind of morbid, but cool to see, Troy Baker be that character that, takes the blow there. So she drives the cleaver into his neck and she gets away out of the room. And then we're brought into, when I think of The Last of Us and I think of like some of the biggest moments in the game, this is what I think of. I think of this restaurant. I think of Ellie. It's burning down. You're hiding from David. In the game, you have to creep around and you have to basically get behind David 3 times before you can, kill him and trigger the next scene. And it is so intense. Every time I play it, it is so intense. And it gets harder, the first, second, third time. It gets harder to stay behind him. It is like so daunting. The place is on fire. The music is intense. David is fast. Like and they capture that well enough in the show where it's like, this is not a good situation to be in. Like, this is a very, very dangerous person. You're a little girl, and like this might not go well.
Dude, they captured this right out of the game so wonderfully.
Visually,
Tim. Oh yeah, Tim's of the same mind as you alluded to earlier. With how close it feels to the game. But like even how the place starts on fire to having to run around, like the setup looks very similar. It works so well. You feel a little bit of that fear that I think you felt in the game. It's not quite to that level because you're holding that controller and you have to do that 3 times, like you said, John. And it's a wider ranging area too. Like you can in the game, you can go in the kitchen, you can go out and where almost like these booths are, but you also can't take certain paths because there's broken glass. So if you step on that broken glass, or if you move too fast, he knows where you are and you're basically done. So man, look up some videos on that, folks.
It's stressful.
If you want to see it side by side, it is stressful.
Right. I love that sequence though. It's always like super rewarding to get that done and to get the payoff here. So we get that restaurant sequence, one of the most iconic, at least gameplay moments, and I would say even narrative moments from the game. David finally gets her, gets on top of her, and he is alluding to some very disgusting stuff that he's ready to, get going here. And Ellie's just out of reach from the cleaver or a knife. I forget what it is. She gets it. She knocks him down. She gets on top of him, and she just starts wailing and wailing and wailing. And it's the same thing that happens in the game. But Joe, you said, I think this is what you're alluding to, where you think you like the game that does it better. I respect that they changed it here. So here in the show, Ellie just keeps beating on him and beating on him and beating on him, and the blood's everywhere. And it's this vicious thing where like she's lost control and something absolutely terrible was about to happen to her. And she's 14 years old and doesn't know how to react to that. So she just goes as violent as she possibly can, and she loses herself, right? She just keeps smashing and smashing and smashing, and she comes to herself, and she walks out, and what happens? She runs into Joel, but Joel's behind her, and she's still in that mode. She turns around, and she's like, no, get off of me, and she already realizes it's Joel, but her body is still moving and still punching him, and she's like breaking down, and I just think the performance is, that to me, that's the peak of Bella's performance in the show so far, is that interaction with Joel where he surprises her. She's still in this defensive, just distraught mode, and she just keeps pounding on him even though she already realizes who it is. And in the game she says he was gonna, and then she just breaks down. In the show she just says he, and she loses all of her words, and Joel brings her in, and the last note I have is Joel says, "Baby girl," and it's the first time he said that since his daughter Sarah was alive, and me and Courtney both broke down. We were both on the couch. Like I probably cry almost every episode because I just am so attached to the story, and it's something that's emotional to me, right? I don't see my wife cry that often with media. Like I don't see her do that when it comes to movies and things like that. But she tosses her head back. I know the tears are there, mine are there, and we just had this moment where it's like, man, this is a powerful story, and this is probably, like I said earlier in the show, maybe the most powerful scene in the show, in the story.
Him calling her baby girl is another moment, early on before this, even episode 1 aired, where I wanted that moment because they connect in the game, and that's the turning point in their relationship where they both kind of commit to being this almost father-daughter pair. And what I alluded to earlier was how I thought the game handled it. How I liked how the game handled it as opposed to the show. I mean, we're splitting hairs here. Both were really good. Both were unique performances, and it's just a little bit of a change, I would say. But in the game, I like the way that Joel is there inside at the last second. So like I guess the premise here was they really wanted to emphasize that Ellie saved herself, and I like that. I appreciate it. But I love that, like, in the game, Joel was so close to being there. But the way they embrace in the game, and she really breaks down from a crying standpoint, like a little girl would. I'm not saying she's a little girl, but hey, she's 14. She's a very young girl.
Yeah.
That is hard for anyone to go through. But still, at that age, oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Right.
So for him to be there in that moment, and the way Troy Baker delivers that line, just it. For me, I was like, it hit harder in the video game and the 2 or 3 times I've played it since that initial run through. Here's still good, even though it was slightly different, but it didn't resonate quite as hard with me.
That's totally fair. It's different. Like so in the game, Joel comes up behind her while she's still in this restaurant, and she's literally mid hack. She's going all out. She's hitting, and she goes back for another swing, and Joel stops her, and that's when they have this embrace. She thinks it's another bad guy. She freaks out for a second, but Joel stops her in the middle of this violence, right? So the show took a different approach, like you said. Ellie finished the job and saved herself. She got through that entire situation herself, and then was embraced by Joel. So yeah, it's a different way of doing it. Yeah, I think we can talk the difference between the way Troy Baker delivered that line and the way that Pedro Pascal delivered the line. It's like, it's pick your poison.
Pedro was great too,
right?
Admittedly, that was also great. I think too, if I'm thinking about this scene, and this is so like, oh my gosh, you could do deep dives and just cut this video up in so many ways. This 2-minute clip and really get into it. But when she walks outside, before Joel hits her or comes in and meets her in the show, she's got a blank look on her face. The blood is there, like she is in a trance almost. And to me, and I think Craig Mazin kind of alluded to this, like it's almost like a spiritual awakening, but in reverse. So like she's walking down the dark path. Yes, we have confirmed she has that violent heart, which they added to the show. They don't say that line in the video game. And they thought that was important to spell that out and really emphasize it. Of course, like you said, ahead of season 2 with what we know we're getting with The Last of Us Part 2. So to me, I even though it didn't hit as hard, I like that artistic approach. Like I don't need a shot for shot remake. I've already played the game. So I think this was a nice way to do that.
Yeah, that's my thing with this whole episode and this whole series so far, is that like it's almost been beat for beat, right? Like we're not talking about very many differences here. We're talking about the timing behind some scenes and some very, very, very minor tweaks. We talked about this earlier. Like most of these make sense to adapt these for television, right? This one was kind of more of like an artistic change. Like it's more about foreshadowing the character we know Ellie's going to become. That wasn't necessarily written when the first game was written, right?
For sure.
But yeah, that's episode 8, and that's a tough one, man. That's a tough one.
What an episode!
Yeah, good stuff. I think I have to sit and let all of these stew to say like what is really my favorite episode, because I wasn't there where immediately I was like, oh, episode 8 is my favorite. No, I think I'm maybe somewhere back in 6 still. But I can make a lot of arguments for just about any of them so far. So incredible stuff as always. The high bar consistently gets met, and that's what I like about this show, is that it doesn't necessarily one up itself every week. I've seen that in a lot of big name Hollywood series, and especially when you talk about HBO. With this started off at a high level, and it has consistently maintained that level, and that's what I really appreciate about this, especially from the viewpoint of Craig Mazin and then Neil Druckmann, and then of course also the performances from Bella and Pedro. And I just got to say, and kind of wrap it up my thoughts here, obviously, episode 8, a very important episode in the overall Last of Us lore and that story. I think they nailed it. I really don't think they could have done much better at all. Buckle up for episode 9, ladies and gentlemen. This one is going to be difficult, and I don't think you're going to see it coming. We'll see if it stays true to the game, but man, it's going to be something.
I'm not ready for it. I'm not ready for it to happen. I'm not ready for it to be over. I'm not ready for any of this.
No.
Good news is we can go and binge it again after it's done.
So like I've already alluded to a few times in this episode, I think that this episode is one of the most, it might be the emotional climax for me. The ending still hits. The ending is incredible, but I'm already thinking like, oh my God, my wife is going to have to wait years to see part 2 to this story. So I'm like, we should
like we did.
We did, right? We did. But like me knowing that the information is available and like it's out there, I'm like, we should play through the game together, or maybe even just watch like a YouTube video, like a YouTube like movie, right? Like all the cutscenes. Like I'm like, I don't know if I can wait for you to experience this story.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can hold on to these
I
secrets.
think it's worth it, man. I just
Would she watch you play it again?
What was that?
Would she watch you play it again? She's in here. She'll probably say that.
Yeah, she would watch me play it, but I think she would lose focus when it comes to like all the gameplay scenes, right? Because like the gameplay, it's a 25 to 30 hour game if you play it. You know, if you play it, it's a lot longer than the first one, and a lot of that's gameplay, right? So a lot of that is sneaking and stealth and stuff like that. That's not necessarily the most fun to watch. And even if you're engaged for a little while, like we're talking like 15 hours of gameplay where you're not really getting story stuff. So. I just wonder if we like just find a YouTube, like the YouTube movie version of The Last of Us Part 2 where it's all the cutscenes, it's the gameplay that makes sense. I've replayed games that way where it's like, oh, I just want to experience the story. Let's do the watch through. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if I can live with all these secrets myself for 3 years, 4 years it'll probably be before we get to season 2 of this.
Yeah.
I bet you it's sooner. I can see this going in 2 years.
I don't know. I hope so, but I'm not confident. It's such a big story. It is such like the set pieces are even bigger too. There's a lot of work to be done, I think.
But what I will say is, we're not getting all of part 2 in season 2. So there's that to consider.
I know, and I still don't think so. I still think 4 years, like minimum, personally.
You're probably right to see what will be seasons 2 and 3 of The Last of Us covering chapter or part 2, excuse me. Yeah, man, I don't know.
I got some homework for you guys for next episode. So my thoughts, I know we talked a little bit about this. I'd love to hear, anyone who's watching this on YouTube or whatever, drop a comment, but anyone who's watching this who thinks what they would like to see or what their guess for the next show or next game to get the Last of Us treatment. So tell us right now, but have your answer for that when this is over. What we think is going to get the next Last of Us treatment, where it's going to go to HBO, it's going to go to like HBO treatment where they put tons of time and money. Yes,
I have my answer. I have my answer already of what I want.
We'll save it for next episode. We'll get other people's opinions. But I'm curious what everyone thinks will be the next one that they give the good shot to, because the reality is this is taking the world by storm. I mean,
my mother-in-law is invested. My mother-in-law doesn't never even heard of a video game, and she's texting she's texting Courtney like, I don't know what this game thing is you keep talking about, but this show is amazing. Like,
I have an aunt that won't watch it because she wants to binge it all, and I'm like, oh,
you need to get there.
For a ride.
And Tim, I'm glad you asked that question. I'm excited to get back to it, but now I know that you guys don't watch our TikToks because I already asked this question on TikTok.
I know you did.
So that makes me feel better.
Then you would know that John's answer is Gran Turismo.
Yes.
Gran Turismo Sport, bro.
I know what John's answer is. I won't say anything, but
we'll talk about it next week. That's a fun question.
Point,
For sure.
So, and get everyone else's opinion. If anyone wants to throw theirs in there, we can read it, look at it for next episode too.
I gotta revisit. I gotta see how I feel now that we've had the hindsight of watching 8 episodes of this and really living through it. So yeah, curious. We'll wrap up this episode here of episode 8 on our discussion on HBO's The Last of Us. Boys, we haven't missed a week so far. Pretty good.
Fingers crossed, baby.
That's rare.
One more.
Almost.
I missed a few, but
it's okay.
Collectively,
we haven't.
Life happens,
It does.
Yes, it does. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for joining us live at twitch.tv/thegeekiverse. Of course, you can watch all our content at youtube.com/thegeekiverse and listen on podcast services wherever you may download podcasts. If you are hanging out live with us, hang out a little bit longer. John and I are going to be talking about The Mandalorian episode 2 here from season 3. A little bit to unpack from the reveal on Mandalore. So excited to get through that. And then we'll see how that goes. After that, we might be doing Busy Sticks as well, our all video game talk show. So for Tim and John, I'm Josiah. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Have a wonderful rest of your week.